Okay. Today we're learning Dafovim the base, but yesterday we did a bit too quick the end of Dafovim and Aleph, and we need a bit of corrections. So we're going to go back a bit, and we're going to start from the last few lines on Dafovim and Aleph. So please bear with me. Toner Rabbanon. This is Dafovim and Aleph, the bottom of the page. Ketzad ma'arvin derech Rosh Hashanah. How do you make an Eruv for a Rosh Hashanah? Before we go any further, I'd just like to say that what's a Rosh Hashanah? So Rosh Hashanah is, the Gemara speaks about the Rosh Hashanah that it's 15 amas, 16 amas wide. 16 amas wide. So the width, once it's wide, 16 amas, it's a Rosh Hashanah. Rashi over here, there's two Rashis over here. So Rashi adds that you need to have 600,000 people using the Rosh Hashanah. This is something which doesn't really have a mocker in the Gemara, and therefore it's a machlekes rishonim. According to the Rambam, 16 amas is considered Rosh Hashanah. The Rambam does not mention anything about 600,000 people. Masha'enkein Rashi says that you need to have 600,000 people using that Rosh Hashanah. Very many Rishonim agree with Rashi, and very many Rishonim do not agree with Rashi. In Shulchan Aruch, it brings both opinions. I think if I have time, maybe I'll be able to bring a raya to Shittas Rashi from this Gemara, if there's an opportunity. Another thing about the Rosh Hashanah is that when is it a Rosh Hashanah? It's a Rosh Hashanah if it goes mishar l'shar, it goes from gate to gate. So the Rosh Hashanah is, if it's a walled city, it goes from one gate till the other gate. Why is it a Rosh Hashanah if it goes from one gate to the other gate? What happens if it's just Rosh Hashanah, which you have 600,000 people, and then the other end there is no gate, it's just the wall of the city? So the Beis Yosef explains, because then you have three mechitzas. If you have three mechitzas, then that's not considered the Rosh Hashanah, because, and similarly also, because of this principle that if you have three mechitzas around the Rosh Hashanah, therefore it will not be considered the Rosh Hashanah, either Rosh Hashanah or Carmelis. So therefore, according to that principle, the Beis Yosef continues that if there is another way out but not the road doesn't go straight through, it still constitutes a mechitza. So even though you have another road, other roads are going out of the city, but if as long as it's not mishar l'shar, so then the other roads, it will still be considered a mechitza from three sides. That's the reason why you need the road should go mishar l'shar. Okay, so according to Rashi, at least, it needs to be going mishar from gate to one to the other gate and have 600,000 people using it. I'm just wondering if I'm just wondering myself, if you need to have 600,000 using, like in one particular area, the 600,000 people use, or maybe you can have, if you can have the whole road, along the whole road, 600,000 people are using the whole road, if that is sufficient. That's which, for instance, Stanford Hill, you don't have 600,000 people at one spot. If you take the whole road into account, maybe you do have 600,000 people. But the thing is, we compare it to we compare it to the Digli HaMidbar when the roads they were going on the Midbar. So then you did have the 600,000 people crossing that or they would all go through it when they were journeying. All of them were journeying. So then I can see there is an argument to be had that you need to have a certain spot where that all 600,000 people cross. Okay, whichever way it is. So you need. Let's continue. So, how do you make an Eruv Rosh Hashanah? You make. So we have three opinions in this. Three opinions in this price. One is Tzuras HaPesach Mikan. You make a Tzuras HaPesach on one end of the Rosh Hashanah. The lechi, the kaira means a lechi or a kaira, or a lechi or a kaira on the other end. So, but one end it needs to have a tzuras pesach. The other end doesn't matter either lechi or keri. That Hananya Omer, Hananya says it's machlekes b'sham b'silo and gives the other two opinions. B'sham Omer, it's a delas mikam, that you make a door on each side. And when you go in and you go out, you have to close the doors the whole time. So according to Bishama, you have to close the doors. Bishil say in Oisa Delas Mikan, the Lechim, the Keri Mikan, you only need one door. And the other, so on one side, the Tzuras HaPesach is not good enough, like the first opinion. You need to have a door. And the other side is good enough to have a Lechi or a Keri. And it does not actually not very clear in the Brisa. Do you need to do the doors need to be closed? Do they not need to be closed? It's not very clear. And the Gemara will be discussed. We'll discuss it. So the Gemara asks the question now on the Brisa. How can we understand this Brisa? Can you make an Erev on the Rishus Harabim? Because we're going to bring a Brisa that you cannot make an Erev on Rishus Harabim. Where's the Brisa? We can't make an Erev Rishus Harabim. But Tanya learned in the Brisa, yes, Rakin on Rabbi Yehuda. Yehuda said, yes, Rakin is referring to something which was mentioned earlier in that Brisa. So Rabbi Yehuda said, somebody had two houses on two opposite sides of the Rishus Harabim, so that means he has two mechitzas. So therefore, now according to Rabbi Yehuda, the two mechitzas, they are sufficient to just like according to the Chachamim, you need to have three, or according to some people, four mechitzas, but three mechitzas is sufficient, and then it's not a Rishus Harabim. According to Rabbi Yehuda, two mechitzas is enough to make it a Rishus Hayom. According to Rabbi Yehuda, two mechitzas is enough. So if you have two houses, that means you have two mechitzas. So with the Raisa already, it's two mechitzas. It's not Rishus Harabim anymore. So, but if you want to carry, so he says, put a lechi. Oisa lechem mikan, the lechi mikan. So on one of the houses, you make lechi on one side where the house begins, and then you make a lechi the other side where the house ends. A keri mikan, you put a keri at the beginning of the houses, or a keri at the end of the houses. The kids, so if you put at both ends a lechi or a keri to remind you, so then you put the nicer answer, so you can carry in the middle. Now, obviously, like I mentioned before, so Rabbi Yehuda's opinion is if you have two sides, it's already not Rishus Harabim. But according to Chacham, they disagree. They say that two mechitzas is still Rishus Harabim. You need to have three mechitzas to prevent it from being Rishus Harabim. So therefore, that's the Omrulay, Ein Ma'arav Rishus Harabim Bekach. You can't be Ma'arav Rishus Harabim because it's a Rishus Harabim. We hold it's a Rishus Harabim. Therefore, so therefore, you cannot make this lechi and both sides because you can't. Why can't you make the lechi on both sides? You can't make lechi on both sides because you can't be ma'arav or Rishus Harabim. So that's the question on what we learned. So we have learned before that what we learned before that what that for instance the hills say you can make a delas on one side and the other side a lechi of a curve. So you're making an erev for or the first opinion, which is b'chlal, that you make a Tzuras HaPesach and a lechi, yeah. According to B'Shamai, when you close the doors the whole time, no, that's proper mechitza. But certainly this Hillel and the first opinion. So you're making an erev over there. So you cannot make an erev. You cannot make an erev on Rishus Harabim. So that you see that the opinion of the Chachamim. That's why they disagree with it. Because if it's a Rishus Harabim, you cannot make an erev. Therefore, if it's a Rishus Harabim, you can't make an erev. So therefore, it's a kasha on this brisa which speaks about making an erev on Rishus Harabim. That's our problem. Anyway, I just want to repeat. So this brisa of Rabbi Yehuda, the brisa is talking about Rishus Harabim. Of course, Rabbi Yehuda considers it a Rishus Yochel because you have a mechitza on two sides. According to Chacham, it's a proper Rishus Harabim. Right. So, so we have the question on the first brisa because you can't make an erev on Rishus Harabim. So maybe you'll say that the pshat is you can make an erev Rishus Harabim. The kachud loy ma'arav. Maybe the pshat is that when the Chachamim told the Rabbi Yehuda it's a Rishus Harabim, how can you have an erev on it? They use the word bekach. So maybe the pshat is you can't have it with a lechi on one side, a lechi on the other side. That's not good enough. But if you have a tzuras hapesach, or if you have a delos on one side And the other side, then it's okay to have on the other side, the lechi or kfeira, then that would be okay. That when they disagreed, they didn't disagree on the whole principle. You can't make an eruv Rishus Harabim. They disagreed on using that flimsy thing for an eruv. Rashi, by the way, uses the word takanta purta. He calls the eruv takanta purta a small takana. It's a tikkun me'at. By the way, the Torah also uses, when he explains the concept of lechi and kfeira, he says, no, since the whole thing is only midrabanan and also to carry, it calls the lechi kfeira a tikkun me'at. That's the language he uses. Anyway, so you can't say that. No, that's not the pshat. You can't say that the whole problem is because of lechi and kfeira. What happens if it's a tzuras haPesach, then it would be okay. You can't say that. Why? Why can't you say that? Because it said in the name Rabbi Yochanan, Yerushalayim ilmol leidalsis said and oz balaylo chayov lem shusarab. But Yerushalayim be'emes is a din of Rishus Harabim because you have 600,000 people and you have the road over there goes from gate to gate, and therefore it's a really Rishus Harabim. The only thing is what prevents it from being Rishus Harabim because he actually closed the doors on both sides. If you close the doors on both sides, okay, so then it's proper mechitzas. So then that's not called a Rishus Harabim. So therefore, what do you see? That if you have a Rishus Harabim, if you have proper mechitzas, you close the doors at night. Every night you close the door. Oh, to say that. But if you don't close the doors at night, it's just this area of some sort of tikkun you're making, etc. That in of Eruv, that does not help for Rishus Harabim. Not just the problem of Alechi, any Eruv doesn't help from Rishus Harabim. You need so much to make proper mechitzas. You actually close the doors at night. Okay, so we have our question on the back. We still have the question on the first brisa. How come you want to make an Eruv on the Rishus Harabim? And then another riot, not only Rabbi Yochanan, but Amar Ula also said, Hani Abula the Mecheza, the gates of Mecheza, and Mola Vatsin and all this, Chayon and Shusram. The same thing was in Mecheza, also a large city with 600,000 people, I guess, and therefore the gates it was closed at night. That's why it's not Rosh Hashanah. Otherwise, because of the Rosh Hashanah. Okay. Omar Rabbi Huda, so Rabbi Huda's answers, Hachikama. That's the pshat. Sorry, Hachikama. That's the Rabbi Huda says that's the Brisa is talking about. The Brisa does not mean how do you make an Erev Rosh Hashanah. It means when he said the word Rosh Hashanah, it means a Moveh Hamfulish street which is open at both ends. So that when it says Rosh Hashanah is not meaning proper Rosh Hashanah. It's meaning a Moveh Hamfulish. How do you make an Erev for the for the streets which are open at both ends to Rosh Hashanah? That's what the Bryce is discussing. So therefore, you can't make an Erev. When you have all these opinions of this Hillel and the first time they come and they say it's Suras HaPesach or Delos on one side and then Elechi on the other side, that is all not for a proper Rosh Hashanah. It's for a Movoi Hamfulish. That's what that Bryce is talking about. The first Bryce is talking about Movoi Hamfulish, and that's what we say that according to this Hillel, it's enough to have one Delos and right. Or the first time I said Suras HaPesach, Mekan v'lechi v'koyre Mekan. Suras HaPesach on one side and the koyre lechem on the other side. Just want to point out something. You might see a very large faces at the side with some pictures. All I want to say is that this we're talking about a Moveh Hamfulish. And Moveh Hamfulish, we said a Moveh Hamfulish, which is open both sides to it's through a road which is open both ends, and both ends they go to a Rosh Hashanah. Just to point that one of the main point of one of the main points of this Tosfos is that he says that if you have a street, Rosh Hashanah, which is Tesvav Amar, 600,000, whatever it is, whatever constitutes Rosh Hashanah, and then it narrows, a certain part of it narrows and becomes less than 16 amas, so it becomes less, let's say it becomes 10 amas or whatever, so then it will still be considered Rosh Hashanah. That's not the Moveh Hamfulish. The Moveh Hamfulish means you have Rosh Hashanah going, like let's say we have, I don't know, we have two parallel Rishus Rabbins. We have two parallel Rishus Rabbins, and then there's a road which connects the two parallel Rishus Rabbins. So some people can walk through. As that would be called a Movi Hamfulish. It's connecting the two parallel Rishus Rabbins. But if you have a Rishus Rabbin which is narrowed and has become into a Movli, and then later it widens up again, which means that the traffic basically is going straight through. Okay, it's going to be a bit difficult, a bit narrow. So then that Movi Hamfulish is considered a Rishus Rabbin. So not everybody agrees with that, but Tosfos is mechadish this opinion that is considered a Rishus Rabbin if it's the road along the way turns into a Movi Hamfulish, then extends out back again and comes back to a normal Rishus Rabbin. And that opinion is also brought in Shulchan Aruch. Okay, let's continue with the Gemara. Itmer, we learned. Rav Amar Ilchasik Tanakama. So who do we paskin? Is when this Movi Hamfulish? We talk about a normal Movi Hamfulish, which is not a proper Rishus Rabbin. Yeah, and Movi Hamfulish, which is not a proper Rishus Rabbin. So this Movi Hamfulish is so Rav says Allah is like Tanakama, that you put one side the Tzuras HaPesach, the other side the Lechi HaKoira. Ushmul Amar Halacha Chananya. The halacha is like Chananya. That's machlokes b'sham b'sil. Obviously, we pass on b'sil, not b'sham. Okay. So now the Gemara is asking a question. I mentioned it earlier. The b'sil, they say there's a door on one side, and the other side you have a lechi or a koyer. That's what b'sham. But they don't speak about closing the doors. B'sham clearly mentions closing doors. Chananya al diba de b'sil. So Chananya, when he brings the b'sil, has been tzorich linen or ain't tzorich linen. Do you need to close the doors, or can just having the door there, even though it's open, will still be considered enough, and you can make Eruv, because let's not forget that this brisa, with Chananya, the first brisa which you mentioned, is talking about what? It's talking about not a Rishus Rabbin. Yerushalayim needs to be closed. The proper Rishus Rabbin needs to be closed at night. So the night to close at night. But the first brisa which we're talking about, the first brisa is talking about a Movi Hamfulish, which is not a proper. It's not a Rishus Rabbin. It's either narrower than Yudvav Amos. So yeah, you don't have the Shishim Ribi there, etc. So this Movi is that's what we're talking about. That you can make an Eruv. So there, do you need to close the doors or not? According to the door, the one door. According to the Bishil, you need the door only on one side. The other side can be Lechi. Toshma. So the Gemara was right. So the name of Shmuel, you don't need to. And then you have another person. You don't need to close the door. As long as you have a door there, it's good. Have a door there. It's better than the Lechi or Koyer. It's much more. So the door is according. Yeah, it's better than a Tzuras HaPesach. It's really. Ikud Amri. There's another from this Reb Masna. There's a different version. There's different version for Nachman. Not that he said the name of Nachman, that it was actually a practical question. You could I actually had this shaila, and it's not he didn't stand here a shir. And he asked Shmuel what to do. And so the kids again. So we have 3 times in the name of Shmuel that you do not need to close those doors according to Beis Hillel. According to Chananya, according to Rav, Bichlal, you don't need the door there. According to Rav, Bichlal, you don't need the door. So he says Allah like Tanakama, Tzuras HaPesach on one side, and the other side. Shmuel said that Allah is like Chananya, so you need a door. So still, do you need to close it or not? So we say no, you don't need to close the door. So they asked Rav Onan, Sarich Lino ain't Sarich Lino. So you have to close the door. You don't have to close the door. So assuming this is a continuation of the Gemara from before. So what we're talking about? So we're talking about we're talking about this Movi Hamfulish. Do you have to close that door according to the Silnot? That's the pashtus, what the shaila which is asked by Rav Onan. Right, because Yerushalayim, we learned before that you have to close the doors, but Movi Hamfulish, which is a Movi which is open book. Omaluhu. So this is the same similar question which is asked to Shmuel. Omaluhu tochazi. Let's have a look. Hani abulav in Adar, the gates of Adar, the Timon Adar Palgaya Ba'afra, they were covered in earth. The kids say nobody, they weren't being moved. They were covered by earth till half the height. So there's no movement. The Ayel Benofik Mashmuel, and Shmuel was there and he never said anything. So again, we have this thing that Shmuel's opinion is that you don't have to close the door, and if the fact there's a door there, that's good enough. Omar Rav Kana said actually from that, the proof that you're bringing, because Shmuel didn't say anything to the people of Narda, that's not a riot. They were half closed or quite closed or whatever. So they weren't really so they were stuck, yes, but they were half closed. So therefore, it's already considered like closed. And so therefore, so you can't say that you don't. You can if you have the doors completely open, that would not be good enough. Okay. Then Ki also Rav Nachman. So when Rav Nachman came, actually Omar Pnayul Afrayo. If Nachman came, he said, "Hey, what's this? Those are the block. You can't move them. They should be taken away." He wasn't thinking about the usage for security. He was talking about the gates of Shabbos. So he says, "Panul Afrayi, you must move. You must make the doors be able to be movable." Ah, so Shmuel till now, you see, he didn't care about the doors not movable. So it wasn't care. Okay, we have a shtickle machlek. It's not clear. Maybe a lot of people said in the name of Shmuel, you don't have to close the doors. And then there was one person who said there's no raya from this case of Shmuel. Okay. But Rav Nachman, he wanted the doors to clear the ground. So it says in the Gemara, no, they make a sovereign Nachman, certainly no. Maybe Rav Nachman argues on Shmuel. And he says, yes, that you have to close the doors. You have to close the doors. The Gemara says, loy, no. Given the Ruyas Linel, Afagab the Einin always, he wanted they should have the ability to close the door. So therefore, a door which can't be shut closed, that is not good enough. But as long as it's movable and you're able to, you don't actually have to close. You don't have to actually close. It's royal, that's good enough. So that's so in other words, for now what are so what are we talking about? Let me see. The city of Narda, the city of Narda, the city of Narda. So we're talking about the gates of the city of Narda. Now, what were we talking about? This whole shaila, which we're discussing in the Gemara the whole time. What are we discussing in the Gemara the whole time? We're discussing about a mavui hamafulish, a mavui which is a two-way mavui. So a mavui which is which is open at both ends. So we say, do you have to close the door? You don't have to close the door. So then what you bring a proof? You bring a proof from Nahardar. That Nahardar, you didn't have to close the doors. You didn't have to close doors, and that's what we're going to stay. We're going to stay with that. You don't have to close doors. And even Nachman, who wanted to clear it out, still didn't have to close doors because as long as it's able to close the doors, the kids are not for him. So what do we see? That this Nahardar, the city of Nahardar, had a din of a Mavoy Hamfulish. Now, Rabbi, I'm asking you, why did the city of Nahardar have a din of a Mavoy Hamfulish? Why did the city of Nahardar not have a din of a Shus Rabbi? Which Rabbi Yochanan says you have to close the doors. You bring a right from the city of Nahardar. We bring a right from the city of Nahardar to this whole discussion. What's the discussion about? Mavoy Hamfulish. We're discussing Mavoy Hamfulish. And then we're bringing in connection to that, we're bringing in from the city of Nahardar. Why is the city of Nahardar not a Rosh Hashanah? Surely there was 16 amas. That this road was 16 amas. The road went. So the gates of Nahardar, they went from one end to the other, and then for sure, a city like Nahardar didn't have a Tesvav amas. For sure, it had Tesvav amas. So I think this is a mocker for Rashi that Tesvav amas is not enough. You need to have. Nahardar Taka was a city, substantial, but it wasn't like Mechayzeh. It wasn't like their time. You didn't have 600,000. So maybe this is a raya from this is a raya to Shittas Rashi that you need to have 600,000 to make it a Rosh Hashanah. And you'll ask me, no, what does the Rambam say? So the answer would be, if we would have an hour to discuss this, we could discuss the Shittas Rambam. I have a particular interesting thing on the Rambam as well, but unfortunately we are time limited. So, anyway, let's continue. To me, it's nice if I'm correct. I think it doesn't sound too wrong to bring a shtickle raya from the Gemara to this whole shit of Rashi. By the way, the Baal Halach Gedolos, who was before Rashi, he also writes that he's from the Geonim. He also says you need to have 600,000. Although a Gemara and Fereshit we don't have, except maybe a raya or some other rayas, which maybe people can find. Okay. Now we have a story. This was this Mavi Okum. Now this Mavi Okum, we look at picture in Rashi, we see it's like the Mavi was like a ches shape. In other words, it started in Rosh Hashanah, it went around like a ches, and then it came back to the Rosh Hashanah. So it's a Mavi Okum. So one second, we had before Machlokes, the other page, we had a Machlokes, if a Mavi Hamfulish, if a Mavi Okum, which starts from Rosh Hashanah and ends in Rosh Hashanah, there we were speaking about the Mavi, which is an L shape. Here we're talking about a ches shape. Anyway, so if the Mavi Hamfulish, so according to a Mavi Okum, which is an L shape, that was the last page. This page we're talking about a ches shape. Now, but the Mavi of the L shape before, so it was a Machlokes Rav Shmuel. Rav says it's called Mefulish, since it starts from Rosh Hashanah and ends Rosh Hashanah. It's called Mefulish. I'm not saying it actually wasn't 100% correct. Since at the center of the L. At the center of the L, you can see the Rosh Hashanah. So the moment you can see the Rosh Hashanah, so that's considered open to the Rosh Hashanah. That makes it foolish. And the according to Shmuel, it's kesosum. That was we had the machlokes before. Now here we have a ches shape. So as a hum mavi okum the havanador rami alei chumra de Rav chumra de Shmuel. So what they did was a pile. They made the chumra of Rav and the chumra of Shmuel. So what was the chumra of Rav? The chumra of Rav that you had to have a tzuras haPesach. You have to have a tzuras haPesach because he is mefurish. Because he's like mefulish. If it starts in Rosh Hashanah and ends in Rosh Hashanah, it's considered like a mefulish. According to Shmuel, it's kesosum. So you just make a lechi at both ends, and that's it. We don't have to make a lechi at both ends if it's okum. But according to Rav, it's considered mefulish. So they had the chumra Rav that they considered mefulish, and therefore they had to make a tzuras haPesach by the edge, like in the part where the top of the ches joins the feet of the ches, the top of the ches or the bottom of the ches, depends which way my picture is the ches upside down ches. So it's an upside down a U shape. So where the bottom of the U shape is where you can see the Rosh Hashanah there from the bottom of the U shape, so you had to make a tzuras haPesach over there, and then at the actual entrance to the two heads of the U shape, you had to make a lech. But the main thing was you had to make a tzuras haPesach by the bottom of the U shape. That's the chumra Rav. Chumra the Shmuel and the chumra Shmuel that it's a Mavi Hamfulish. Therefore, they needed to have a door there. So not only did they have a lechi, they actually had a door. So it's a funny thing because what's here is according to Shmuel Bechlal, it's kesosum. So therefore, it's a Mavi Hasosim. You have a lechi at each end, and that's okay. According to Shmuel himself. So what they said, no, they said it's a Mavi Hamfulish. According to Rav, it's Machlokes Rav Shmuel. We don't know. So Machlokes Rav Shmuel, we don't know. So therefore, we will be machmir like Rav. We will consider it a Mavi Hamfulish. Oh, if it's a Mavi Hamfulish, so we need to have a door at one of the entrances. Because Shmuel says that Mavi Hamfulish, we need to have a door. Rav says even a Mavi Hamfulish, it's enough to have a tzuras haPesach. Sorry, they had to make I said incorrectly. They had to make the door at the bottom of the U, where the bottom of the U joins the feet. In my picture, Rashi, I have a picture. It says Delis. So they had to make it. They had to make the tzuras haPesach over there, where the bottom of the U joins the two upright sides of the U. They had to make it tzuras haPesach over there because that's where if you can see the Rosh Hashanah, you have to make a tzuras not tzuras haPesach. Mitzad Rav, Mitzad Rav, you can make a tzuras haPesach is good enough because Rav says a tzuras haPesach on one side and then a lechi at the edges. That would be good. But because they take the shitta of Rav and the load on top of that, they load the shitta of Shmuel. It's not the shitta of Shmuel. Shmuel's shitta is it's kesosum. Don't bother. Just don't make nothing there and leave nothing. Just make a lechi at one entrance to the Mavi and the other entrance to Mavi. The Rav says it's in foolish. So then they pass on like Rav it's in foolish. Machmer, sorry. And then on top of that, they say, it's in foolish. So then Turas HaPesach is not good enough. We have to worry about Shmuel. That maybe Shmuel, that you need to have it delis. With the Chodansis, Chum Shmuel with the Chodansis. Let me say it more properly inside. I won't touch it. Whom we all can have another. Ramale Chumer the Rav, Chum the Shmuel. What's Chumer the Rav, Chum the Shmuel, what's Chil Dances. Chumer the Rav, the Chumer the Rav, the Amaterosikim foolish. So I've explained all that anyway. So the Gemara asks the question, I don't. Or maybe the question should start over here. Gemara says, I don't get it. Chumra the Rav, the Amateroskim foolish. You're being machmel Rav like a foolish. Say there, if you machmel Rav, so it's enough to have a Tzuras HaPesach. But Omar Rav, Allah Kitana Kamas. Why have delis? So that Kishmuel the Omar and Kishmuel the Omar Halach and Chananya Omar Shmuel Tzuras HaPesach. This whole thing which I said before, that's what the Gemara is asking. If you machmel Rav, so then you can make like Rav. You need a Tzuras HaPesach. If you hold like Shmuel, you need a delis. Here, Bechlan, you need nothing because he holds its kesosim. So you Bechlan don't need anything there. Yeah. Anyway, so the Gemara says so the kids, but they did. So the Gemara's question is, so the Gemara's question is, do we make two chumras? So you're making a chumra according, you're doing the being machmer to Rav and then being machmer according to Shmuel. So that's what the Gemara about. I must say, I didn't read the Gemara so correctly. I'll just leave that for later. People can read it themselves and do it correctly. Just I want to finish up the Gemara. But the point which I said was correct the way of this pshat. So the Gemara's question is, you're going to be machmer like Rav and like Shmuel. And what's the problem? No, being machmer, maybe Rav is right at this point, maybe Shmuel is right, being machmer according to both. What's wrong being machmer according to both? And now, so the Gemara said this, what time you learn the price? Lo olam halacha ki b'sil. You should know. Allah is like b'sil. And from this price we will see, you can't be machmer like both. Well, where do we see that? So lo olam halacha ki b'sil. But right to last is kedir b'shamai, oise. But if you want to do like b'shamai, you can do it. Kedir b'sil, oise. You do it like b'sil. So Allah is like b'sil. You can do it. B'shamai, you can do like b'sil. If you go always for the more lenient guy, the kulas of the Shammai and the kulas of Basil, then you're in Rosh. All of us are stupid. Yeah. Because either Basil is right or Shammai is right. One of them is right. If it's B'Shamai, you follow B'Shamai, the Kula Eluchumra. If it's Hillel, the Kula Eluchumra. If you follow B'Hillel, you go to Kula Eluchumra. So, yeah, you don't. Is B'Hillel right? B'Shamai right? So they can't both be right. So if you think that they're both right, and we'll discuss that more in length tomorrow. But we're going to start off the subject today. Now the Gemara says, one second, before we get any further. Before we fully express the kasha, hope go for kasha. We don't. This brisa is something strange. The brisa. Anmat we said lo ilam halach kibes hillel. We said halach kibes hillel. V'hodar amas haroitz las kibushamit. The first statement in the brisa is halach kibes hillel. Then you say if you want the b'shamit, if you want the hillel, what's going on over here? So the Gemara says lo kasha. That's not a kasha because the statement where it says halach kibes hillel is a later statement. So the original brisa was without that piece. Later they added that piece. So it says this: Likasha kan koida baskel kan la'acha baskel. That la'acha baskel they added the piece la'ilam halacha kibes hill. But before that, the mission of the halacha was you can do it like Rishama, you can do it like this hill. Okay. The Iba is saying, man, there's going to be three truths on it. The Iba is saying, that both are talking about the outer baskel. Rabbi Yeshua had the loy mashgiach baskel. That yes, so the olam halacha kibes hill is somebody else's one tana, the other tanoim, and then the person who says haroitz elasik dir Rishama or or you can do like B'Shama or B'Hillel, that's Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Yeshua says you don't pass him according to the Baskel, and therefore even though the Baskel came out a lot of this hill, you don't pass him that. The Iboy Sema, and now the third teretz is Hochakam. Kol Hechim Mishkachas Freitanoi, but Tremeroi, the Pligan body. Keim Machlekes B'Sham B'Hillel, Lele Evet Kikula Demar, Kikula Demar, Leke Chumre Demar, Chumre Demar, Oi Kikula Demar, Uke Chumre, Ovid, Oi Kikula Demar, Uke Chumre Ovid. Yes. So what's we saying over here? That when it's saying B'Sham B'Hillel, it doesn't mean the loch is like B'Hillel. There's loch like B'Hillel over then. But when you have a Machlekes similar to the Machlekes B'Sham B'Hillel, the general principle. It's taking that as an example, B'Sham B'Hillel. Practically, B'Sham B'Hillel, the loch is. But but if you have a Machlekes, I don't know, Kiva or Bishmol, whatever it is, so either you follow Rabbi Kiva or you follow Rabbi Shmuel. To be make like both, or to be machmir like both, that's not acceptable. If you make like both, you're a Russia. You don't care. If you machmir about, you're excel. Because either Rabbi Kiva is right or Rabbi. So sometimes you machmir like him, and sometimes you machmir like him. The kids. So. Mikoma Kim Kasha, and that will finish up here. So that at the bottom line, we sort of figured out the brisa, we sort of made it fit how we say Lo Ilam Aloch Kibsil, and then we say do what you want, because it's two opinions, or whatever. We have three truths on here. But the Kasha is so we cannot. So we see that there's no point in being machmir like this one and like the other person. And so therefore, how come they were machmir like Rav and Shmuel, and that's the kasha and Mitzvah Teretz we'll be learning tomorrow.
Sure.